you? You all look generally smiley, so, hopefully this is gonna go well. And so, sorry, I have a little bit of cough. I may cough occasionally. And this clicker doesn't want to work. Let's see. There we go. So about 2 years ago, I wrote a personal essay that was published in the Globe and Mail called Black on Bay Street. It spurred quite a bit of discussion about diversity and inclusion in workplaces around Canada. In this piece, I set out my experiences of what it was like to be the only Black woman at the largest firm in Toronto and the largest firm in Canada. I never meant to be a lawyer. Originally, I was a dancer and a musician, but I have immigrant parents, and some of you may be familiar with this phenomenon. And so I had to choose a more suitable career, like engineering, or law, or medicine, or engineering, or law, or medicine. And I liked Law and Order. I had a thing for Jack McCoy, kind of wanted to be Jack McCoy, and this is aging me now. And it seemed like a safe place to put into fruition my parents' dreams when they moved here from the Caribbean to provide a better life for their offspring. So I wrote the LSAT, applied and accepted to a bunch of American and Canadian schools. I had the choice between racism or guns and racism, and so I chose just racism, and I stayed in Canada. I then summered and articled and practiced as a labor and employment lawyer on Bay Street for about 3.5 years. And initially this piece was supposed to be about the hiring process. I worked at Swiss Chalet for my first job, and my interview for Swiss Chalet was harder than any of my law firm interviews. At Swiss Chalet, they made me do math, they asked me questions about my goals, where I wanted to be in 5 years. In my law firm interview, I know we talked about the Leafs and Manolos for about 20 minutes, and then I got a call back, one of the first ones. The Leafs sucked, so it was a pretty shitty conversation, but there you have it. And I thought it was ridiculous that this was a fact, that my Swiss Chalet interview when I was 17 was harder than my law firm interviews, that I got asked tougher questions about what I was going to do with my life and what kind of person I was at Swiss Chalet and not at a large Bay Street law firm that's going to be responsible for a lot of revenue. So I initially sat down meaning to write about this process, but when I sat down to write, a different story came out, and that was my story, or the story of all the things that got me there and all the forces that led me to leave, a story about the current state of inclusion and belonging in our workplaces. I talk about the exclusion I felt as a child, having to hide elements of myself because they didn't conform to others' expectations of what Black and female were. I talk a lot about my father's role in rejecting conformity and defying expectations, and if you have read the piece, you will affectionately refer to my dad as Black Santa Claus. I talk about my experiences as interviews, knowing that I should talk about ultimate frisbee and scotch and my father's engineering degree, not barbecues and roti, and his occupation as a cab driver. I talk about what it was like being the only one, being the only Black woman in the largest office of the largest law firm in Canada. I was terrified before it came out. I was worried that nobody would want to hire me again, but in the end, it felt more important to share the story. And to be honest, I was not expecting the response I got. I thought we all knew that racism was a thing in Canada, and it kind of shocked me and surprised me. I really didn't think I was saying anything radical. But I learned that there's a lot of power in being honest and in being vulnerable. You all know, if you've read the piece, way too much about my life. And I was lucky being outside of the law practice, having left it a number of years before, that I could be that way and that I could say those things. And I was able to speak plainly about my reality without mincing words and shed some light on the impact of the systems and structures that are in place. I got 13,000 shares on Facebook in the first week that the article came out. 250,000 people watched the video that accompanied it in the first week on YouTube. I got 5,000 new Twitter followers in a weekend, so that was fun. Hundreds of emails from people who felt like they didn't fit in, and it wasn't just other Black people or white men who wrote to me saying that they didn't fit in, issues of class. I got basically a whole wide spectrum of individuals, and no hate mail for Black women on the internet, and that's pretty incredible. But it was disappointing to know that I wasn't alone, that so many people feel excluded but it was comforting in a small way. But so many people are made to feel like they don't belong in their workplace, in their organization, in their community. And what we truly, truly need to understand is when people feel this way, you are not getting their best self. When only certain people are made to feel like they belong, you are not left with the best people. And I think that's a real shame. But it also means there's a real opportunity. That if we recognize talent and we practice inclusion, this can really make a difference in the lives of Canadians and really in the lives of all Canadians, because we are all better for it.